A thin veil of mist draped over the mountains like an untouched dream, swallowing the world in pale silence. The wind moved slow, carrying the scent of pine and rain-soaked earth, the kind that clings to memories. Somewhere in that breathless stillness, she walked alone, suitcase in hand, her footsteps crunching over gravel that had forgotten names. They told her to forget her past, to start again, as if memory were something that could be erased like chalk. But the mountain didn't forget. It watched, ancient and patient, as though it had seen this before. Souls arriving to hide, only to be found by themselves. She looked up, her breath trembling in the cold air. What if forgetting wasn't peace, but another kind of prison? The morning unfolded in shades of silver and blue. A silence so complete it seemed the world itself was holding a secret. Ilara unpacked her things slowly, each item a remnant of a life she wasn't sure she wanted to remember. The journal she found in her suitcase had no name, only the faint scent of lilac pressed between its pages. When she opened it, her handwriting stared back at her, though she didn't remember writing any of it. Words of longing, fear, and something softer. Forgiveness, perhaps. She sat by the window, tracing the shape of the mountain through the mist. The longer she stared, the more it felt alive, like it was breathing with her. Solitude wasn't quiet at all. It was filled with the sound of memory, learning how to speak again. Outside, forest exhaled. Each breath of wind moved the world a little closer to remembering. Ilara stepped onto the porch, letting the cold air sting her skin away. The silence pressed against her chest, both comforting and unbearable. Somewhere beyond the trees, she heard the soft creak of wood, a door, or a voice disguised as one. She looked toward the path where she had first seen the old man. No one was there now, only the gentle dance of fog curling between the trunks. For the first time, she wondered if solitude wasn't something you entered, but something that entered you, quietly, until you could no longer tell where it ended, and you began. Later, she found a second door inside the cabin, smaller, hidden behind an old curtain. It opened to a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. She hesitated, her hand resting on the rusted handle. The air smelled of cedar and thyme. When she descended, the creak of each step echoed like a heartbeat. The room below was lined with shelves filled with books, candles, and photographs she didn't recognize. In the center stood a mirror, covered with a white cloth. She reached for it instinctively, pulling the fabric away. Her reflection stared back, older, tired, but unmistakably hers. And yet, for a fleeting second, she thought she saw someone else behind her, just beyond the glass. That night, she couldn't sleep. The mountain's silence had changed. It no longer comforted but called to her. Every creak of the wood, every whisper of wind felt like words spoken through walls. She lit a candle and opened her journal again, searching for meaning between the lines. A sentence near the end stopped her. You will only find peace when you stop running from the person still waiting inside you. She froze, the flame trembling in her hand. The ink was fresh, too fresh to be years old. Somewhere in the distance, a faint knock echoed, soft and deliberate. She turned toward the door, her heart no longer afraid but alive. The next morning rose gray and trembling, the mist hanging heavier than before. Ilara stood outside, listening to the soft hum of the forest. It wasn't silence anymore, but a language she couldn't yet understand. Every sound carried a weight. The crack of a branch, the hush of falling snow, even her own heartbeat. She wandered down a narrow path behind the cabin, drawn by something unseen. The world felt half dream, half memory. Her footsteps led her to a frozen pond surrounded by birch trees. Beneath the glassy ice, faint shapes shimmered like ghostly reflections. Faces, hers among them. She dropped to her knees, breath sharp in her throat. The past was no longer waiting behind her. It was beneath her feet. She stayed there for what felt like hours, tracing the edge of the ice with her fingertips. When the wind shifted, a faint whisper rose from beneath the surface. Soft, childlike, almost familiar. Her body stiffened, every instinct caught between fear and recognition. "Remember me," it said, or maybe she imagined it. She stumbled backward, snow clinging to her coat, her pulse drumming in her ears. The voice echoed again, faint but certain, and in it, she heard her own name spoken with warmth she hadn't felt in years. The stillness of the forest closed around her, as if holding the secret too. Back inside the cabin, Alara's hands shook as she poured water into a pot over the fire. The warmth did little to thaw the chill inside her. Every shadow seemed alive, whispering reminders she had tried to bury. She looked toward the mirror again, the same one she'd uncovered in the basement. This time, the reflection wasn't still. Behind her image, faint movements shimmered, like someone walking just out of frame. She blinked hard, but the motion continued. A soft laugh, unmistakably that of a child, filled the room. It wasn't haunting. It was heartbreakingly innocent. The days began to blend into one another. Each time Alara walked through the forest, the same path twisted into new shapes. The trees whispered words she almost understood, fragments of lullabies her mother once sang. In the evenings, she'd sit by the fire, watching the reflection of the flames dance across the mirror, waiting for the child to appear again. She didn't fear her anymore. Instead, she longed to understand what the child wanted to show her. Maybe the past wasn't chasing her at all. Maybe it was leading her home. That night, Alara dreamed she was standing in the same forest, but this time, the snow was gone, replaced by green moss and running water. The air shimmered golden, and in the distance, she saw the child again, barefoot and laughing. Alara called out, her voice echoing through the trees. The girl stopped, turned, and smiled. "You left me here," she whispered. The words hit like a stone sinking into water. Alara's chest ached as she reached out, but the child vanished, leaving only the echo of her laughter behind. She awoke with tears on her face and a single thought in her heart. She hadn't come to forget. She had come to remember. Alara awoke to the sound of glass cracking. The mirror in the basement had fractured in the night, a single line running through the center like a wound. Her reflection looked back, split but alive. The fire had long gone cold, leaving only the sound of her breath. She touched the broken surface, tracing the divide between the two halves of her face. For a moment, the air behind the glass shimmered, and she saw a flicker of movement. The child again, her small hand pressed against the other side. "You can't hide forever," the voice whispered, soft and certain. Alara closed her eyes, her hand still on the glass, and felt warmth pulse beneath her palm, like a heartbeat that wasn't hers. She climbed upstairs, the echo of that warmth still pulsing through her fingers. The world beyond the window had changed. The mist seemed brighter, almost alive, as if reacting to her awakening. The old keeper was standing outside again, leaning on his cane, his eyes fixed on her window. She hesitated, then stepped out to meet him. When their eyes met, he spoke without preamble. "The mountain doesn't keep secrets. It waits for them to be remembered." His words felt heavier than the air around them. She wanted to ask what he meant, but he was already walking away, leaving his footprints etched like symbols in the frost. That afternoon, she returned to the pond, compelled by a need she couldn't name. The ice had begun to melt in patches, revealing clear water below. As she stared, faint ripples formed, though there was no wind. The reflection staring back was not her own. It was the child's. Her heart pounded as the image blinked, alive, aware. "Come find me," it whispered. The words didn't echo in the air, but inside her chest. Alara stumbled back, tears rising unbidden. She wasn't afraid anymore, What terrified her was how much she missed the child she once was. When she returned to the cabin, the mirror was no longer broken. It stood whole again, its surface glimmering faintly like liquid silver. Alara stepped closer, her heartbeat sensing with a rhythm she didn't understand. The air around her vibrated with a low hum, something between memory and music. The reflection began to shift, revealing flashes of her childhood home, sunlight through curtains, laughter, the sound of waves against a dock. She reached out, and her fingertips sank slightly into the surface, as if the glass were soft as water. Then she heard the voice again. Not outside her, but inside her. Remember how it felt to be whole. Night came quietly, but the stillness was different now. The fire burned warmer, the shadows less cruel. Alara sat by the mirror, the journal open on her lap. The words she had written before now glowed faintly under the candlelight. Lines she didn't remember writing appearing one by one. When you meet yourself, forgive her. She looked into the mirror. The child was there again, sitting cross-legged, smiling through tears. Alara smiled back, her own tears falling freely. I'm here now, she whispered. For the first time, the child's lips moved in perfect unison with hers. The reflection didn't mimic her. It became her. The mountain morning was breathless, the air too still to be alive. Alara stepped outside and found the old keeper waiting by the path. His lantern was unlit, yet its glass caught the light of the dawn like captured fire. Without speaking, he motioned for her to follow. They walked through the forest, the mist curling around them like smoke from a memory. Finally, he stopped near a clearing where an old stone well stood, half swallowed by ivy. You've come this far only to remember what you were never meant to forget, he said, voice low and steady. Alara stared into the well, dark, deep, endless. Her reflection shimmered faintly on the water's surface. What did I forget? She whispered. He looked at her, eyes heavy with compassion. You forgot that love is never lost, only waiting to be forgiven. Alara peered deeper into the well, and the darkness began to move. Shapes formed, fleeting, fragile. The image of a small house, laughter spilling through open windows, a woman's voice calling her name. The memories flooded upward, too fast to stop. She saw herself as a child, running barefoot through a garden, her mother's hand brushing her hair, her father's voice singing softly in the background. Then the image shifted, a storm, shouting, a door slamming. The well water rippled violently and Alara stumbled back, gasping. The keeper's hand caught her shoulder. You've carried their silence for too long, he said. It's time to let it speak. She fell to her knees beside the well, tears streaming down her cheeks. I wanted to forget them, she whispered, voice trembling. It hurt too much to remember. The keeper crouched beside her, his hand resting lightly on the rim of the stone. Pain is a seed, he murmured. You buried it thinking it would die. But it grew in the dark. What you feel now is it breaking through. Ilara's breath hitched, her eyes fixed on the reflection below. The child was there again, smiling through the ripples. Then what do I do? She asked. The keeper's gaze softened. You listen. The mountain remembers, for those who cannot. As the day stretched into quiet evening, Alara sat by the fire, the keeper across from her. The journal lay open between them. He spoke slowly, his words carrying the rhythm of truth worn by time. You came here because you thought forgetting would heal you. But solitude doesn't erase, it reveals. His eyes reflected the flame's glow, making him look ancient, almost ethereal. You're not the first to come here, he continued. This mountain has seen many who ran from pain, only to find themselves waiting at the end of the path. Alara looked up, her voice soft. Did you run too? The keeper smiled faintly, eyes distant. Once. Until I became what I was running from. That night, Alara dreamt again. Not of the child, but of the mountain itself. Its peaks moved like slow breath. Its rivers whispered her name. She stood on the summit, wind tearing through her hair, and below her every memory shimmered in the valley like light on water. The voice of the keeper echoed in her mind. To remember is to return. To forgive is to be free. When she opened her eyes, the dawn had broken through her window, soft and pink. The mirror beside her bed gleamed gently. She no longer saw the child, only herself. Whole at last, the two reflections joined into one. The storm arrived without warning. Thunder cracked like a breaking promise, and the forest bent beneath the weight of wind and rain. Elara stood by the window, watching the trees thrash in the dark. The old keeper had not returned since the night before, and for the first time she didn't feel abandoned, only tested. The mountain was alive, demanding that she face what she had buried. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the mirror in a flash of white. For a heartbeat, she saw not herself, but her parents, arms open, smiling, their faces radiant and whole. The vision dissolved with the next thunderclap, leaving only her reflection trembling. "I'm ready," she whispered. The storm answered in kind, shaking the cabin to its bones. The wind tore open the cabin door, scattering papers and ash into the air. Elara ran to close it, her bare feet slipping on the wet floor. She could hear whispers carried in the gusts, voices of the past, layered and echoing. Laughter, apologies, words left unsaid. "You can't silence them," she said aloud, voice trembling but fierce. The storm howled louder as if in reply. She stepped outside into the tempest, rain lashing her skin, lightning painting her figure in silver streaks. The mountain loomed before her, vast and merciless. Yet beneath its rage, she felt its pulse, steady, forgiving, eternal. She climbed the hill behind the cabin, the storm roaring around her. Each step sank deep into the mud, but she kept moving. The mountain peak shimmered faintly ahead, its shape blurred by rain. When she reached the summit, she fell to her knees, breathless, her hair plastered against her face. "I forgive you," she whispered, not to her parents, not to the keeper, but to herself. The words vanished into the wind, but something inside her shifted. The thunder softened. The rain slowed. For the first time, the storm's voice sounded like a lullaby. As the storm faded, silence returned. But it was not the silence she had first met. This one was alive, breathing, full of peace. Elara stood slowly, the wind brushing gently against her face. The sky broke open into a soft, gray dawn, and from the valley below came the distant sound of birds. The mountain glistened under the first rays of light, its rivers sparkling like veins of memory. She felt her heartbeat sink with the earth, steady and calm. The pain hadn't vanished. It had transformed, becoming something she could carry without fear. She smiled faintly, whispering to the wind. When she returned to the cabin, the fire was burning again, though she hadn't lit it. The old keeper sat by the hearth, his lantern glowing faintly at his side. He looked up and nodded once, as if he had been waiting for her all along. "The mountain has accepted you," he said softly. "Now it will release you." Elara smiled, her eyes shining with tears that no longer hurt. She sat beside him, hands resting on her knees, and together they watched the flames dance. Outside, the storm had left the world, reborn, every leaf washed clean, every breath new. The keeper closed his eyes, and Elara felt gratitude bloom in her chest like light. The silence no longer frightened her. It felt like home. The first light of dawn slipped through the cabin window like a quiet promise. Elara awoke to the sound of birds echoing across the valley. Soft, hesitant, beautiful. The storm had washed everything clean. She stepped outside barefoot, the grass cool and damp beneath her feet. The mountain no longer loomed. It welcomed her. Mist moved gently across the trees, revealing streaks of gold on the horizon. For the first time, her mind was still, not empty, but peaceful. Every memory, every scar, every loss now rested inside her, not as weight, but as warmth. She whispered into the morning air, "Thank you for remembering me when I couldn't." And somewhere deep within the forest, the wind answered with a sigh, tender and whole. She wandered down the familiar path toward the well. The air was cool and sweet, carrying the scent of pine and earth. When she peered into the water, her reflection stared back, clear, steady, whole. No more ripples, no ghosts beneath the surface, only herself present and alive. She smiled and reached out, letting her fingers graze the surface. The touch sent gentle rings of light outward, spreading wider until the entire well shimmered like liquid sunlight. She felt the truth then, that healing wasn't about forgetting, but becoming large enough to hold it all. The pain, the joy, the silence. Every fragment belonged. When she returned to the cabin, the old keeper was gone. Only his lantern remained, placed neatly on the table beside her journal. A single line had been added to the last page in handwriting not her own. "The mountain remembers, but it is you who must live." She traced the letters with her finger, her eyes soft with understanding. Picking up the lantern, she stepped outside once more, lifting it toward the light. It no longer glowed. The flame had gone out, yet she felt warmth radiate from it still. Some presences never vanish. They simply change shape. Alara walked toward the ridge where the forest met the sky. The wind was gentle now, carrying only the faint whisper of water and leaves. As she reached the overlook, the valley below unfolded in breathtaking stillness, rivers sparkling like veins of silver, meadows stretching like unspoken prayers. She sat at the edge, pulling her knees close, and simply breathed. She didn't need to understand everything. Peace was not a question to be answered, but a rhythm to be lived. And for the first time, she felt she was part of it, a note returning to its song. As dusk approached, the light turned to amber, the sky a quiet ocean of color. Ilara stood outside her cabin, the lantern beside her flickering faintly with the last of the day. She felt the pulse of the mountain beneath her feet, slow, ancient, eternal, and her own heartbeat matched its rhythm. In the distance, the faint laughter of a child echoed through the trees, carried on the wind. She didn't turn toward it this time. She only smiled, letting the sound wrap around her like a lullaby. The mountain had not taken her pain. It had taught her how to carry it with grace, and in that grace, she finally found her freedom. Morning came quietly, soft as breath. The mountain wore its calm like a sacred vow, every tree shimmering with dew, every sound tender and alive. Alara opened her eyes to a world reborn. The same, yet entirely changed. She moved through the cabin slowly, her fingers brushing along the wooden walls that had once felt confining. Now they pulsed with life, as if they had been waiting to exhale. On the table, her journal lay open to the final page. A single line of her own handwriting glowed faintly in the light. Peace is not silence. It's the song that plays when silence learns to listen. She smiled, closed the book gently, and whispered, "I'm home." She walked through the forest path one last time, the sound of her footsteps blending with the whisper of leaves. The air carried the fragrance of pine and distant rain. Every stone, every branch seemed to hum with familiarity, the earth remembering her as much as she remembered it. She paused beside a stream where the water ran clear and soft, kneeling to touch it. The reflection that stared back was bright and whole, no longer shadowed by the past. "I forgive you," she murmured again, this time not from pain but love. The wind stirred gently through the trees, answering in silence that needed no words. By midday, the sky was an endless stretch of blue. Ilara reached the overlook where she had once collapsed in the storm. Now the ground was dry and warm beneath her feet. She stood with her arms open wide, breathing in the world. Each inhale carried memory. Each exhale released it without grief. She felt the pulse of the mountain beneath her feet. Steady, ancient, kind. She realized then that solitude had never been emptiness. It had been presence waiting to be met. She whispered a quiet thank you to the sky and let the wind carry her voice wherever it wished to go. As dusk returned, she sat by the fire for the final time. The old keeper's lantern still rested near the hearth, its glass catching the fire's glow. She lifted it gently, running her hand along the worn metal. "Thank you," she said softly, though she knew he was listening in ways she could not see. The flame within the hearth flickered higher for a moment, just enough to cast two shadows on the wall instead of one. Alara smiled through tears that were not sorrow, but gratitude. She set the lantern by the window and let it face the mountains, a beacon of remembrance, not loss. When night finally came, Alara stepped outside one last time. The stars stretched endless across the sky, their reflection rippling in the pond below. The mountain breathed in quiet harmony, and she with it. She no longer searched for silence or escape. She had found something deeper, belonging. The child within her no longer called out for rescue. She was standing beside her now, not as a ghost, but as memory made whole. Alara closed her eyes, lifted her face to the night and whispered, "I am free." The wind rose softly, carrying her words into eternity, and the mountain, in its ancient calm, whispered back,